Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to have a nice little chat about the state of GPU mining. This is going to be for September 2024 and just gonna give my overall thoughts on it. What am I doing? Am I still mining? Am I buying some of these coins? Am I not? Am I dumping it? Am I dumping the hardware? What is the future outlook? What I'm doing with it, right? So we're gonna have a nice discussion coming from my perspective as a small at-home miner, right? So I'm gonna piss a lot of people off, but we're gonna have a real talk about it, right? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get to this thing. So currently, as it's been essentially the past 2 years, things just on the profitability standpoint are not looking too hot, right? Arguably right now, it's one of those times where it is very shitty. The overall sentiment is GPU mining is dead, which again, it's been very repetitive, right? And it's kind of funny because I've done similar videos now. This is now the third one, similar timing, right? So we did videos in October of 22, talking about what we're going to talk about now. Another video, I just looked up, previous video was in October 23, doing the same thing we're going to talk about now, and now September 24, it's a repeat. Sentiment is the exact same. I do anything but GPUs. GPU mining's dead. It's over. And I agree with you to a point, right? It just really depends on your strategy. Like I've been getting a lot of questions recently, like, oh, what are you doing? Do you think it's still viable? Is something to look into? And you can't really answer it that simply, right? A lot of it just has to do with the overall strategy for bear market mining, right? Which for me has been 100% speculation. Okay, if your strategy throughout these 2 years, again, whether you're ASIC mining, CPU mining, GPU mining, for me, it's been all the same, right? If you've just been mining for profit and selling every month, it has not been that fun of a time. If you're a person who's been speculating and specifically speculating on the right coins, you've had a lot of W's these past 2 years to the point where could be life or game changing, right? Which is kind of the case for me, right? So I do both things. My biggest gains though with GPU mining has been buying GPU mineable coins. So being in the game, using those GPUs to stack as a way to ECA, but it's been using that knowledge of being in the market, looking for potential, getting in some of these coins early, and speccing those coins. For me, it's been buying those coins, right? So like my biggest dub, and it's probably going to be the biggest dub of all time for me, is buying Caspa, right? And we got in early. We bought our bag in September of 22. I don't think anything's ever going to top that, right? So that has been a huge game changer for me. There's been a lot of other little dubs when we're specking, messing around with things like Chlor, XNA, Radiant, a lot of different coins, right? And during different times, which were times like they are right now, where profitability is like this, where it's essentially garbage, barely break even. These have been those lucrative times, right? To what? To buy the coins, right? Like we've mentioned over and over, I'm a big advocate for doing both. There are different times when one is a bigger advantage than the other. Obviously, the game plan has been when things are bearish, GPU mining is dead, it's over, things are not profitable, this has been the time to stack, okay? When things are profitable, things are super green, hopefully things do recover sometime next year, that's the time to mine. Okay, so also for me, again, basic criteria, break even or better, probably going to be mining. Okay, at a loss though, absolutely not, right? So those videos I did when I first started, almost 2 years ago now, got a ton of flack for them at the time, especially that first stage, right? Where a lot of it was regarding Flux. That's when everybody was on Flux's nuts and we're going to mine it till the end. I don't care if it's at a loss. We're going to delayed ROI or whatever the hell they were trying to sell people with, but not to talk crap about Flux. And like I mentioned it clearly, it's actually one I'm very bullish on, have always been bullish on, but it's just the overall sentiment with mining at a loss that's been my issue. Luckily now people have, started to turn the leaf and started to see that there's, again, times that it makes more sense to buy, times that it makes more sense to mine. And when you're at a significant loss per day, and that's a coin you're bullish on, you're going to want to be mining that coin, right? Especially As crazy as it sounds now, right, referencing those videos back then, there were points in time where after the merge, you were going to get like 2 to 3 times as many coins by just buying it versus mining it, yet still people still wanted to argue the fact that that was a stupid way to go, right? So now, luckily, the perspective has changed. It's now more accepted or more normal to do so, and that's cool, right? At the end of the day, for me, from the beginning of this, it's stack. What mining, buying, whatever, stack the most amount of coins for the least amount of fiat, right? That's the simple game plan for me. That's the whole theming of the channel. That's the whole reason for the channel. And that's just because it's my personal strategy. And that's what's been working for me. Okay. So, again, this is where I'm saying it's perspective, though. Again, if you're looking for passive income and things like that, then yeah, it's been a horrible time. If you've been speculating on those coins that did appreciate, it's been good. And right, it's not to say that every single coin did that, right? People who are mining, for example, like Ergo this whole time, or Raven this whole time, or Flux this whole time, you missed out on those Caspas, you missed out on mining a lithium, you missed out on a lot of those huge gainers, right? So this is why, like, I'm a huge advocate also for actually learning what you are mining. Look at that coin. Are you bullish on that coin? Does that coin have potential? What do you think of the team? What do you think of the vision? Look at the tokenomics. Those are all different value propositions, right? Because there's a lot of coins that we've seen have been duds, have done horribly in comparison. And that's why you kind of have to look at those things, right? So it's important to look at all that stuff. But again, current profitability wise, not too great. But again, these are those indicators that, like, when things are at a loss, especially if a coin you're bullish on, it's time to be stacking, right? So again, like we mentioned, though, it's not always a guaranteed thing. It's not always like you're going to do well, or like, oh, it's a low market cap, it's going to do well. Like a good example, and this is one that definitely a big L for me, which a whole lot of money isn't lost, but I mean, losing $400 is never fun. And this, a good example of this, Hypera. Pretty much can say now this is going to be an L, right? Market cap is down to $44,000, 24-hour trading volume, $500. Okay, it's gone down massively. A lot of pool support is either lost or going to be lost here in the next few days. Is there still a chance it comes back? Sure. This is not one I would speculate on, right? This is kind of one that we're looking at it like in terms of like Chlor and XNA last year when we were looking at pumps. Kind of the same thought process with this one. This one did not pan out, though, for sure, right? There were times where we could have taken some profits. I was like, I'll let it ride, and it should have just taken that 2-3x, right? But another lesson learned there. But other coins did appreciate, right? The time we're referencing last year, this was the time where, again, a lot of these coins were doing well. Is just timing. And it's weird how they all cluster together at times, right? So like this was, again, I had done a video in early October 23 talking about that same exact sentiment, that profitability was down. This is the time to buy coins. And again, this is one that, depending on where you got in, within the span of 2 months, right? So if you got in anytime early, September or October, you did anywhere from like a 20 to 30x within the span of 2 months, right? And it depends on whether or not you realized it, right? Some people are super against selling, like, no, whatever. Like, if it's a coin I believe in, I'll hang on to it. Neurai wasn't one of those. Chlor wasn't one of those. Those were some of the big gainers during that time. Those were just like degen plays. If they pump, they pump. And they pumped and we sold, right? It's that simple. If anything does a 10, 15, 20x within 2 months, probably a good idea to take profits, right? So depending, some people did, some people didn't. Some people's strategy is, nope, not selling shit. And again, if it's a long-term hold, then yes, I agree with that, right? But for me, these weren't. So we did profit take and then rolled it into the coins that we do believe in. Okay, this is one that has retraced pretty aggressively. So I'm not saying that this was going to do well. Again, for me, this late in the game, I'm looking for quality over quantity, right? And it's up to you to determine which ones that is. I'll give specific examples. None of this is financial advice. Not saying this is going to do well. This is just literally my picks, what I'm looking at, okay? So one that has been a dud, you can call it, because of the price action. Iron fish, right? It's one I am still bullish on though. It's one I am still going to continue to stack. I did recently add some more at these recent lows just because they did hit all-time lows. And I did just double my recent position, right? Which my long-term 2025 bag was, the goal number was 1,000 iron. Now I just doubled it to 2,000 iron because of how low it has dropped. To me, the reason I'm still bullish on, again, everybody has their reasonings. This is not a thing to advocate for any coin. If you guys have watched previous videos, you guys know why I'm bullish on it. But it's one that, again, still has continued development. They're still here. They're still relevant. They're still doing their thing, right? And that department, nothing has changed. But the price action has been shitty for real. But this is where, if it's a project that I'm holding or wanting to hold also, this is also the time to buy, right? So, for example, we can see it's down to 43 cents. Recent bear market all-time highs. Even if it just reaches that point, it's about a 9x, right? So risk to reward for me is good here, right? Can it go lower? Sure, but to me, there's just so much more upside from here, right? So even if it goes down another 50%, which is fully possible, there's still so much more upside, right? Next up would be another one at pretty much all-time lows. This is one that I did buy a good amount, and I did just recently buy some more. Why? Because we're at all-time lows. Same exact value proposition. Even if we just hit bear market highs, looking at very extreme gains. Okay, looking at an easy 10x. Okay, just to get back to that point. Okay, so for me, risk to reward looks good. Again, it's another one, same thing. They're still doing their thing. They're still developing. They're still continuing. Nothing has changed, just extremely shitty price action. Okay, can't really say the same for Hypera. Community's pretty much donezo. Mining pools are essentially giving up on it. Kind of a different animal here, right? So it's up to you to determine, to do your own research, see what things you're bullish on. So whether it's these, whether it's Ergo, Flux, Dynex, there's a lot of still GPU mineable coins that do still have a lot of potential, right? You have to just determine which ones you think will have the most potential, because those will be the best outcomes, okay? So back to the mining versus buying front. One good example, we're just going to do it with iron, for example, and why it just makes more sense to buy currently, or why it's so much more advantageous, and it's just because of the current yield, right? Currently, you're at a pretty significant loss. These specs here, it's a 8-card 3070 rig at a 10-cent kilowatt hour. Currently, you would only be yielding 4.27 iron per day, okay? To buy 1,000 iron, it's only going to be, again, 430 bucks. Okay, that's to buy 1,000 at one time. For you to mine that amount, it's going to take you 238 days. That's nearly 8 months with a little 8-card rig if you're mining. And to me, realistically, this isn't even a realistic number. Because what's going to happen in 8 months? If the cycle plays out, if we're getting the bullish action, price action we're thinking we're going to get, this is not going to take you 238 days. This is you're probably not going to make it. Why? Because if the price action goes up, what is also going to go up? People are going to mine it more, so the difficulty is going to go up, meaning what? Your yield is going to go down. Okay, you would need 8 months of this hash rate staying at this all-time low, prices staying at this all-time low, to do that in 8 months versus what you can do in one day for 400 bucks. Okay, so this is kind of how I view it. This is what I did with previous coins, especially coins that were long-term holds, right? It was the same value prop with like why I decided to buy Caspa when I did, Radiant when I did. Same exact things, right? Everyone makes the argument, oh, if you mined it, obviously you did well as well. But people who bought it at those like most opportune times, again, the hard part is we don't know when the lows are. It's just risk to reward, and hopefully maybe you got the low, maybe you didn't. To me, it just makes more sense to buy, because again, you're not going to get to this point, right? Because it's very likely that iron between now and the next 8 months is going to go up. Your yield is going to go down, and chances are it's going to take you way longer than this if you even make it throughout the bull market, right? So it's risk to reward. It's looking at different things, but again, this is only going to work with coins that you feel are going to appreciate, and if that coin just appreciates, right? And which one's going to do the best, we don't freaking know. right? You kind of have to just do your own research, and this is the speculation aspect, right? Because at the same time, these can all go to zero. They are all tiny market cap coins, very harsh price action. Wouldn't take a lot for this situation to happen to either of these, any of these, right? So something you got to factor in, something you got to consider, and why you have to look at it, right? So you have to do your own research. You have to consider all those things. So in that sense, though, my references here have been for buying the coin, right? So we're talking about mining. Am I really mining right now? Up to as of a few weeks ago, no. When I unplugged some of those ASICs, I did also unplug the GPUs just because things weren't looking good. And most likely, the GPUs probably, for me at least, are not going to get plugged back in. Okay, probably going to go full-blown ASIC here. Reason being is just, like I mentioned, for speccing any of these coins, the new coins that have been coming out, again, the only one might do something, Zealous. Majority of everything else, as far as the new things, not very bullish on. I'm stacking those more older coins that are more established that I feel will do well, which there's quite a few. It just depends on which ones. But out of the new batch where you'd really be speccing, you'd really be early, like, oh, I think it has like, 20, 30x potential, or even a 10, 15x in the short term, not really bullish on any of them, right? So that's one big key difference from the previous 2 years that we mentioned, right? And that's why, for me, on the mining side, currently, pretty much made my decision to go full-blown ASIC for now, at least. Does that mean I am done? For now, yes. As far as future outlooks go, do I think things will be profitable again? Yes. Do I think the ASICs have better value propositions though, and that's why I'm going more in that route? Also, yes. That's the main reason, right? So I'm keeping my current cards. I'm probably going to be selling more of them. Again, I sold the bulk of them way early on. I'm probably going to go full-blown ASIC here, with the exception of potentially doing some like AI proof of use for work rigs. Okay, so that's gonna be the difference maker. So again, like I mentioned, I think things will get profitable again. Not saying I'm super bearish on them, but I think there's just more money to be made with the ASICs. Okay, it's also very likely that those ASIC prices are going to go up way higher than some of the current GPU prices. Okay, so again, the time to be buying these ASICs is kind of now. In the next 4 to 6 months, if things go up like we're hoping they do, they're probably going to be out of range. And that's when things will be different. That's when GPU mining will be more viable. That's when I'll probably be looking there more so than anything, just because I'm probably going to be priced out of those ASICs. Okay, so that's why my focus is there now. Okay, so again, like I mentioned, they will be profitable, especially those coins that I think will do well. So like Flux, Ergo, Nexa, Raven, potentially some of these other Kapal coins, and potentially some other new ones that come out. Maybe Zealous does do well. Maybe another new coin comes out in the next few months and those do well. Okay, so I think they will have their time. Do I think they're going to have ETH profitability? No, I think those days are going to be almost 100% gone. I think the best case scenario here is that we do get some kind of profitability, like even $1 a day on a 3070 to me would be very good. $8 a day on an 8-card rig, not bad at all. Okay, would I be buying more GPUs right now for that? No, right? For me, it's just, again, the value proposition currently, when we compare the prices of ASICs to GPUs, I think everything is more clear with the ASICs. Okay, that's just where my perspective is, and that's where my focus is. The standout here, though, would be the proof of use for work aspect, and that's where things kind of change. Okay, so like, if I were to buy more GPUs, which I will be, it's going to be cards that are going to be able to take advantage of both scenarios. Okay, and this is one thing I've been flipping on back and forth, and whenever I do those update videos, this has kind of been the dilemma. Now it's starting to get pretty clear, right? And for me at least, it's hard to say which one is going to do better. Okay, or maybe they both just do okay enough to do well. Okay, So like for me, if I were to get in new ones, it would be ones to take advantage of both ends. So 4090s, 4080s, 4060 Ti's with 16 gigs, anything with VRAM. What we've seen with the proof of use for work or the AI thing is VRAM. Okay, you want cards that have that. On the GPU mining side, the best bang for the bucks are still those 30 series, or I know a lot of people with the CMP 170Hs. Those also have potential there, but you're more limited, right? You're gonna have more potential to do both sides with those other cards. So does that mean I'm gonna buy 20 4090s? No. Will I buy probably a couple of them, 2 3 maybe 4? Sure. Is that gonna be the extent of it for now? Also sure, until I see things maybe flipping. Maybe something does look like it's gonna trend up crazily. Maybe some new coin does look like it has potential, but to me, in my opinion, even if a new coin were to come out, like, oh, this one could be the next Ethereum, it would have had to have come out already, right? For it to gain that momentum, gain that price action, gain that use case, gain that development, it's something that would probably be in existence now, right? Because again, we are nearing the end of this bear market, going into this bull market, potentially, and as soon as like 12 months, we may be done with this bull market, okay? That we don't have a lot of time on that front, okay? So from that perspective, that's kind of where I'm looking at. And then it gets tricky because then it's like, okay, well, I'm bullish on the proof of use for work thing. So I'm bullish on those cryptos that are going to do that. So things like Flux, Dynex, Core AI, those marketplaces. Even on the buying perspective, like I think they'll do well in terms of profitability next year. So I think we will make out well utilizing those services, and we'll be able to profit from them in that case, but not necessarily for me to invest, and I think they're going to do a 20x from here. Reason being is that the AI marketplaces, they don't have to be crypto projects, right? We've seen this with Salad, right? It does not have to work that way. And then another different, like, game-changing thing that I think a lot of people aren't factoring in is that it doesn't even have to pay you out in fiat. It doesn't have to be a proof of work aspect thing. Like, it doesn't have to be a proof of work project. It doesn't have to be like Flux. It doesn't have to be even something that gets utilized for you to be incentivized to be on that network. Okay, so the issue with like being ready to go and not getting paid until you get a job with, let's say, Flux is AI thing, or let's say you're on Core AI, right? Is that you're not going to get paid unless your thing gets rented out, and there's no benefit for you being on there necessarily unless you actually get rented out. The difference with some of these like proof of stake projects that are coming out is that they can still incentivize you even if you're not being rented out, right? Without paying you in fiat. And Salad and things like that, Vast, you have to get rented out to get paid, right? But those products do want you to be available in case they do get some big contract, they do get something there. There are ways to incentivize you even if you don't get rented out. A good example of this within the proof of stake world is things like IO.net and a bunch of these coming out in the future that are more proof of stake based, right? They can incentivize you through their coin or their token in the form of like airdrops for having you just being ready, being there, be ready to be utilized. For example, in their first stage of their testnet, I had a 3080 rig that not once ever got it utilized, and in that airdrop in 1 month, maybe 6 weeks, it made like $450. Okay, and that's the advantage that like these proof of stake projects have with airdropping for these kind of incentives have over like proof of work projects. Okay, you can be there, you can be ready to go, and still get incentivized in a way, right? And that's what's going to drag people away from being ready on like Flux or being on Clore, and they'll be more on these things, right? So they don't necessarily have to be on these like proof of work projects to do well. Okay, so in terms of what actually gets utilized and getting paid for that work, I think you're going to do well with those. But as far as being bullish on it, like, oh, I think Clore, I think any of these AR marketplaces are going to 20, 30x and their proof of work, I wouldn't be so quick, just because in reality, these guys have that advantage because they can just airdrop you those coins. Okay, you can just even not even be utilized, but just having you there and ready, they're going to incentivize you. Okay, so we saw that with IO.net. We're going to see that with a bunch of others. Okay, this is only the beginning. for those things. So that's where it kind of gets tricky also. So like I do want to build rigs for this, but like as far as investing in like Core AI or any of these AR marketplaces, because I think they're going to be the best, I wouldn't do it for that reason. So I would go onto these things in order to make that money, but not necessarily invest into those marketplaces for long term. In reality, I think like these will do better because of the tokenomics of it, right? You don't have to waste that energy and not get paid for anything. You can still be incentivized for it, right? So just something to consider there. Um, as far as hardware prices go, they've kind of been the same, right? 3060 Ti's now are like in the $200 range. 3070s are like 230, 250. They've just kind of been up and down, but there hasn't been any like drastic changes, right? There has been deals on like infrastructure things though. Those are things like one big notable deal are those octo miners, those X12s, which are like mini X12s, right? The spacing is horrible, but for 230 bucks shipped, these things are still super available. They still have like 2,000 of them in stock. These things are fantastic deals, but I mean, this kind of gives you a good idea of like where the mindset is with crypto mining, right? The fact that this crazy of a deal, been available for months now, still have crazy availability, and they're still not selling out. That's kind of telling you that a lot of people just aren't super bullish on everything as a whole, right? So the other big thing is the potential for the 5,000 series coming up sooner than later, right? We're now in September 24. We're potentially 3 to 5 months from the 5090s or any of the 5,000 series coming out. There are rumors of delays coming out. Right here we can see Nvidia Blackwell design change might affect G4 RTX 50 launch. Reports of high power consumption. The reason they're saying for delays and why it might happen is a narrative we've been saying since the beginning of this AI craze is that Nvidia is going to prioritize their AI hardware versus their consumer grade like video game stuff, right? So you can see just this statement right here sums it up. Nvidia's upcoming Blackwell GeForce RTX 50 GPUs might be affected by changes in the launch schedule due to data center prioritization, right? And that's always going to be the focus because that's where the freaking money's at. Okay, they're not going to care about the video game GPUs anymore. This is where the money's at. Okay, but this could be a delay. So initially we're thinking maybe by November, December. Now it's looking like Q1, but in reality, who knows? But the reason I'm highlighting this is whether or not it's worth it to get into like 4090s or just wait for these. Kind of just depends on the price points. Unfortunately, we don't know what the price of these things are going to be. If the AI narrative does take off, these things can be 2,000, 2,500 bucks. Currently 4090s, you can find used ones in like the $1,300 range. Risk to reward, right? So it just depends on what you're doing. I'm personally on the fence still. Do I want to get some of these? If they're under $2,000, I'll buy at least one, maybe two, because we know that this is going to be where the priority is going to be if your rig is going to get rented out for those services. People are going to want those high-end cards. Okay. So another thing kind of on the downfall though, as far as like the, high powered compute aspect goes, is the fact that we're not getting as much demand, and it's giving these companies time to start really building, really expanding to the point where people who are thinking that they're going to be able to do this with their 3070s and such, it's not looking too great, right? So you can see Elon's Colossus supercomputer built with 100,000 H100 Nvidia GPUs goes online. H200 upgrade soon. The largest supercomputer, Colossus by Elon Musk's xAI, goes online with 100,000 H100 GPUs and will double in size with 50,000 Nvidia H200 GPUs soon. Okay, so the advantage for us would have been like, okay, while these things are building, we're going to have our services, they're going to need it, they're going to utilize us. The demand hasn't really been there, right? Especially not for these smaller cards, for these like 3070 8 gig cards, 3060 Ti 8 gig cards, which is what a lot of us have. The demand has been there for those higher end cards, right? Those 4090s, 3090s, etc., things with 16 gig plus of VRAM. So that's why that's more of where my eye would be, right? I know there's still hope though. That doesn't mean it's all over. Dynex's big thing is that Maybe on like X1 lanes, we can still get away with it. Flux's initial big thing was that anybody would be able to provide compute power. Maybe they can figure out a way to really cluster that. So if you have four 3070 8 gig cards, could be the equivalent of one 4090, for example, something of that sort. But even currently, the way the demand is, it's not looking too great, right? We're going to have to wait and see. But realistically, what we do know is going to be in demand. If there is a demand from consumer grade hardware, it's going to be things like 4090s, 5090s, things with 16 plus gigs of VRAM. Okay, so the longer it takes, though, the faster these guys are going to get their things up. Just because, like, for example, these guys, they did it. They put up 100,000 of these H100s in 122 days, right? It's pretty massive, and they're going to double that power within a few months when they add these 50,000 H200s, right? It's just been insane how fast they've been able to do it. And that's where the money's going to go. That's where the hardware's going to go. So instead of building 5090, like consumer grade 5090s, if some kind of delay happens, they're going to stop production there. They're going to make whatever they make, and the push is going to be towards these H100s, H200s, building these super clusters. Like it's insane, right? You can see here TSMC VP believes AI can push semiconductor revenue to $1 trillion, right? That's where the money's at. That's where it's been clear for the past year and a half that that's where the focus is going to be. So that's where it's all going to go to, right? So whether or not we can small fries get a slice of the pie, maybe not. But again, the ones that do have the best chance are going to be the latest and greatest. It'll be 4090s, 5090s, things of that sort, right? So hopefully maybe there is such a demand that even 3070s and such will be able to be utilized with things like flux and such, but I wouldn't hold my breath, right? Realistically, the play would be there, and that's why for me, probably the people who've made out the best so far in terms of this, and from the pure perspective of just mining, not necessarily buying GPU mineable coins or being interested in GPU mineable coins, but from the purely the mining aspect, the best plays were people CPU mining was one of the better plays. Okay, people who bought decent CPUs, good graphics cards, took advantage of both scenarios when things made sense, right? Whether it's mining with that CPU and the GPU, or whether it was providing high-powered compute for things like Salad or VAST when that was popping. Those were the people probably made out the best from purely the mining point, right? Not necessarily the buying mineable coins, etc., but from purely the mining aspect. That to me is where the future is going to be. So that for me, when I do add, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be getting good CPUs, getting some Ryzens, taking advantage of potentially either CPU mining and then GPU mining with that 4090, 5090, 4080, whatever, or putting it on things like Salad or Vast AI, doing something of that sort. To me, that's where the vision is a little bit clear. Like I feel more confident putting money into that even now because I think that's what will do well, right? Will traditional mining with 3070, 3080s be better? Maybe not. Okay, that to me it's more 50-50 on that front. I feel this will do well. And then on top of the fact that you do have resale value here again with things that are latest and greatest. Okay, the 3070s, 3080s, they're only kind of going down unless mining takes off. Okay, the 4090s, 3090s, anything with 24 gigs of VRAM, we've seen that there still is demand for these things. There is still resale value. So even if they're not crazy profitable, you potential that even with like a 4090 now, as we've seen, people have been able to either mine on them, provide them for compute power for these past 2 years, and it can still, to this day, nearly 2 years later, sell them for essentially what they paid for them, right? So that's kind of the risk to reward. So I know people are looking at ROI and break even. That's kind of the wrong way to look at it in my opinion. Okay, this is kind of the play, is that you have the potential resale value here, right? Which you don't necessarily have that with ASICs, right? At least not as clearly. It's something that can get wiped out that fast with bigger, better hardware. Okay, so is there still potential here? In my opinion, yes. Is it going to be the same as the previous cycle though? Absolutely not. On the 3070, 3080 front, like traditional mining, it's going to be more on the spec mining, being speculative, being early, taking advantage of specific scenarios, just like it has been for the past 2 years. Is there hopefully going to be a coin that takes off? Hopefully. Do I think it's going to be as profitable as Ethereum mining days? No. Do I think there's still potential though where they can do well? Maybe a 8 card rig can do 15, 20 bucks a day for an extended period of time? Possible. Okay, is it also possible that high powered compute takes off and that does well and those 4090s can also do fairly well? Yes. Okay, but for me, the narrative that does seem more clear is to go with the higher end GPUs, going that route. So you can take advantage of either scenario. Because in reality, we don't know which one's going to do best. We don't know what's going to do well. Okay, so yes, GPU mining is still going to be relevant. It's still going to be there. It's still going to make money. But is it going to make as much as like what ASICs are doing? That's where it gets debatable. And where my bet is, it's with the ASICs. ASICs, deep in projects, things of that sort. That's just where the vision to me has been clear, and that's where my focus has been. So although currently right now I'm pretty much going 100% ASIC, I'm not ruling out GPUs. I probably am going to sell some of my 3000 series with the intention of my using it to buy some 4090s, kind of, but not really, right? Because in reality, a 10 card rig of like 3070s, 2,000 bucks. How much is a 4090? About 1,500 bucks. Does it really make sense to just do a straight sell for that? Not really, right? So it's kind of to each their own. And then the other argument is, oh, why would you sell your GPUs at the bottom? It only makes sense if you're going to do that if you're going to buy something else that's at the bottom. So like for me, the reason I'm kind of giving that example, whether it's worth it to sell that rig for 14090, no, because the 4090s are at the top. What would make sense though is like the play with iron we were talking about. We're buying 1,000 iron. It would take you with that 8 card rig 8 months to do it. The $400, what is $400? 23070s. So that to me is the play. So if you're selling it to buy something else that's at the low or arguably even lower, like I think it's more likely that iron can do a 10x from here than 13070 doing a 10x. Okay, so that's why that's the way I'm looking at it. So like for me, the way I'm playing it is I'm selling 23070s. Those 400 bucks I'm getting, I'm buying 1,000 iron, right? So that's kind of the play. Am I going to dump all of them? Probably not. Am I going to dump quite a few? Probably. Am I going to keep all the infrastructure though? Yes, I'm going to keep all the motherboards, all the risers, all that kind of stuff. But the cards themselves, maybe selling all of them, maybe just half of them. Don't really know, right? Just gonna kind of wait it out, just see how the market continues. But for me at least, that's the way I view it. That's the way I'm seeing it currently, and that's the way I'm playing it, right? This whole past year, every time I've done these videos, kind of been saying I'm kind of indecisive. Now I'm definitely leaning in that phase. That's kind of where I've been leaning at for the past like year. In reality, I wish I would have done it. I wish I would have just gotten those damn CPUs and a 4090. I would have probably had like 3 to 4 by now, those rigs, and I would have made out somewhat well. But I've kind of just been waiting for things to happen, at least at this point. Like I've mentioned, the vision is starting to get clear. That is, at least right now, going to be the plan, right? Can it be making some of those AI rigs and then eventually buying more GPUs? Maybe if the vision's there or if it makes sense, if the profitability's there. But currently, I'm going to go with where the money's at. Okay, and that's where it's at. So for me right now, it's ASICs. With these new ASIC purchases I made, that's pretty much going to max out those 330 amps. So that's why, as of in about a week or so, I'm going to plug in even those unprofitable ones, and I'm just going to go for it. Okay, and I'm going to max out those circuits. The GPUs will remain unplugged. And that's why I'm looking at selling them. Okay, so is it over? Is it dead? No. Is it looking like it's as profitable as the ASICs though? No. Right? So that's where my focus is. Like if I wasn't into ASICs, then yeah, I would hang on to them and I would just continue to spec mine. I would continue to do that thing. But for me, I have the ability to have these ASICs. And I think there's just more clear potential, at least right now, right? So in reality, it's all a gamble. We don't know. 2 months from now, Zealous pops off. It's $100 a Zealous. World goes crazy. Flux takes off. Dynex takes off. Nexa takes off. And compute takes off. Different story, right? But you have to place your bets where you see things. And for me, at least, y'all know where I'm at, right? So I know it's a long one, guys, but I'm just giving you my thought process, and it's not a simple answer, right? I've been getting a lot of questions regarding this, and people get frustrated because I'm kind of giving them a general answer, but it's because you can't do it, right? It's a lot of factors, a lot of things going on. Depends on your strategy, depends on your outlook, depends on what you're doing, depends on a lot of things, guys. It's not as simple as like, oh, I should do this, because again, this market, depending on what you've been doing, what your strategy was, two completely different points of view, right? These past 2 years, we've done excellent, right? GPU mineable coins have been incredible. For me, because of speculating on that aspect. For other people, it's been horrible, right? So that's why strategy is so freaking important. It's not as simple as plugging it in and just doing whatever, right? You can have two people can start mining at the exact same time, exact same wattage, exact same amount of cards, have radically different results. Okay, it's all in the strategy. Okay, let me know what you guys think in the comments, guys. Are you still GPU mining? Are you still bullish? Are you still buying cards? And if you are, what are you buying? Are you buying 30 series cards? Are you buying CMP 170s? Are you buying 4090s? Are you preparing for both scenarios? Like what I'm looking to do, let me know what you guys are doing. Please don't just do those generic GPU mining is dead things. Like, come on, guys. Like, give a little bit more argument. Like, if you think that's the case, let me know why. Like, do you think all those coins? Do you think Flux is going to zero, Raven's going to zero, and X is going to zero? Like, why do you think that is? Right? Give us a little more than that. So again, guys, please comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, guys, and I am out.